Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Line, line, line. Line, 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 line. Line, 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 line. The Voyage Home. That's what that trailer is for this week.
I think you had a lot more problems with the trailer than I did.
Oh, I'm sure of that.
I thought the trailer, yes, it's one of those older trailers that kind of has, relatively, it's not big chunks like trailers from the 50s where it's like, here's a 30-second scene and here's another 30-second scene. But this one is like, here's a fish out of water moment in San Francisco. Here's another cute fish out of water moment in San Francisco. Oh, and here's another cute fish out of water.
Let's be clear. It's all of the cute fish out of water sequences in San Francisco.
It's pretty much is.
It's all of them.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And here is some rain stuff in the future. That's pretty much all of it. You actually made a really good point about this trailer, though, because I watched the trailer, and with the benefit of having just watched the movie, it looks like they give away the whole plot, like the whole thing. What you know from the trailer is that there is a horrible probe that is probing the planet Earth of the future, and that the crew of the Enterprise, now HMS Bounty, which you don't actually know know, that's not a thing you know, but of the warbird is flying home to turn themselves in, and they get the call that there's a thing, and they realize, oh my gosh, we have to go back in time. So now we know it's a time travel story, and they have to find the secret to the future in the past. And so that, to me, implied the whole thing. But you had a really good point. I'm going to let you reveal that point because it's that good.
It is. They leave the entire plot of whales out of the trailer. You don't get an iota. I mean, you do see when they're in the water and you see the whale tail.
You see the whale tail
flap next to them. But it's in no way is there any context that they actually just saved that whale and brought it to the future. It's just, for all you know, is their ship crashed in the ocean and the whale's swimming by. Which, just like in Castaway.
It's so ridiculous. Why is there given all of that, you finish the trailer and you think, okay, let's assume I hadn't seen the movie. Why the hell is there a giant whale in the foreground of this shot? And so on that front, Andy, you are absolutely right. They do a very effective job of burying the big secret of the film and keeping it out of the trailer. That's great. And I still think it's a crappy trailer. It's just too much. It doesn't build any intensity. It's just this. It is the ADHD of trailers.
Putting myself back in 1986, watching this trailer, this is the reason that, I think this trailer worked so well for people, because it makes Star Trek look like it's kind of fun. They're hanging out in modern San Francisco, and you see these future people trying to, get used to this stuff that is present day, and it's funny. And as a 13-year-old going to the movies and watching this trailer, I guarantee that I laughed watching this trailer, and that's probably one of the things that I wanted to go see, is because it made me laugh so much. I think that's why this is such a successful Star Trek film and drew in so many people who might not have been kind of the hardline Star Trek fans. Does it mean that the film itself has issues? It's hard to say from the trailer. Well, it's not hard to say from the trailer.
It's not that hard to say from the trailer.
The trailer pretty much tells you that it's a little different than what you're used to if you're a big Star Trek fan. I think in context of the production company at the time trying to sell the movie and draw in an audience, I think it was effective. And the fact that it keeps the whales out, I say it's a success.
All right, and I think it is also possible for me to be emotionally enraged by this trailer, and for you to be right at the same time.
Well, modern you is enraged at this trailer.
That's right.
Don't tell me that you're.
Yes, no, everything you just said is exactly right. My younger self was probably laughing right along with you because he was also an idiot.
Avoid the planet Earth at all costs. We are under the attack of an orbiting probe.
Notify all stations. Starfleet emergency. Red alert.
Earth is on the edge of destruction.
We cannot survive unless a way can be found to respond to the probe.
The key to saving the future
Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth.
can be found only in the past.
We're going to attempt time travel. Sulu, take us home.
These are the voyages of the crew of the Starship Enterprise.
Judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived at the latter half of the 20th century.
Stardate 1986.
San Francisco. Our own world is waiting for us to save it.
They have 24 hours.
Everybody remember where we parked.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
The hell I am.
We spoil movies. Tonight on the show, Spock in tow, we're headed back to the 80s with director Leonard Nimoy's Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you are a regular listener of the show and you just aren't getting enough of us, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel. Everyone who becomes a patron will automatically start getting our exclusive Patreon patrons only weekend show, the Saturday Matinee, where we talk trailers, film news, box office, and whatever else strikes our fancy. Plus, we do lists, all sorts of fun lists. This weekend, we're going to be doing our top 3 movies featuring animal rescues. That's right.
Who wouldn't want to tune in for that?
I know.
I love the box office news, but I'm really here for your animal rescue faves.
Everybody is, Pete. That's what people want.
Andy, what do people want out of this movie?
That's a good question. This is probably the most just light and entertaining of the Star Trek films, but also divisive because it's so different, I think, from what Star Trek generally stands for. This is one I would really love to have a conversation with Gene Roddenberry and see what he says about kind of the general tone and the direction that they took here. I think it's a film that has a deeper message, might be a little strong, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Interestingly, I think it pairs a lot well with Star Trek the motion picture in that it's kind of an alien object heading to Earth, and these people just have to figure out, what is it trying to say to basically save the planet. And I think that's a really interesting connection between these two. This is a tricky film for me though, because I have a very strong connection to it because it did hit me at that perfect age that I just really loved everything that was going on here. But it is a film that hasn't aged as well for me. And I think because of the way that they do connect it to the time, it does tend to date it a little bit, particularly with some of the comedy that I really struggle with.
Well, and that's I don't know, the way I had a really hard time keeping my attention glued to the film. And I know that's for two reasons. Number one, I've seen it a lot. And that should be telling, right? I've seen the movie a lot. I've watched it a lot with friends and family. It's a movie that's just really easy and palatable, right? Easy to watch. I think it's harder to watch alone, frankly, when you don't have the gift of somebody else laughing alongside you. Once you've seen all the jokes, once you've kind of internalized the delivery enough, it gets a little bit boring. And that's kind of where I was on this thing. It is, however, when you think about Star Trek, kind of the series, and the camp of the series, what the series sometimes try to do. I'm thinking specifically about episodes like The Trouble with Tribbles. This is peak Trek, right? This gets us into Trek enjoying itself on a more modest sort of TV production budget, and Trek trying to really capitalize on these likable characters in, as you say, these fish out of water situations. I found myself saying this is the Gilligan's Island of Star Trek movies. And I think that for me, that sort of contextualizes it. And it also allows me to say, I don't go to Trek for comedy. And that's, I think, where the movie sort of starts to fall apart, and why I would agree with you. It doesn't really age all that well.
Well, it's funny because I wouldn't call it an out-and-out comedy. It's not like Will Ferrell comedy or something like that. And I do think that with people like Simon Pegg involved in later versions of Star Trek, there still is some of that comedy in there. I'm curious how those ones hold up. Give them a 20 years or 30 years and see how they hold up. But I think the problem I have with this one is the comedy tends to just be a much more dated type of comedy that might just not work as well. Plus, I just don't think it's comedy that's as well thought through. I think a lot of the comedy, they're really relying on those gags that come along with the fish out of water stuff. And sure, I think some of it is kind of funny when you put them into, like when you have Chekhov, the Russian, asking a cop, where are the nuclear vessels? I can get that there's some comedy there, but unfortunately, I think you have to look at script first, and it all comes down, the problems I have come down to script. If the comedy as is integrated better into the story, where I believed that was probably the only way for these people to be doing the things that they're doing, I probably would have bought it much better now. But as I look at it now, I feel that a lot of the stuff that these guys are doing, they're really just writing it into the script because they're going for the laughs. And I don't feel that they're as appropriate anymore. I feel like stepping away from it, I feel like I don't think that these characters would be doing these things because I think that they're smarter than that.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point. Like they already have precedent a lot of precedent on screen, big screen and small screen. They wouldn't do that. It's an interesting thing, to hear Nimoy talk about it. And in fact, everybody that is interviewed, that I have seen interviewed about this film, all has the same general sort of emotional response, a general feeling about the film, that they loved it. They loved the experience. It's the most fun they've ever had on a Trek film. To hear Nimoy talk about it, he says things like, it took us some time, speaking in the context of the first few films, the first three films, it took us some time to figure out how to enjoy ourselves. And in Star Trek IV, we thought we'd do a caper. We'd literally put our feet on the ground in San Francisco and do a caper film. And that's kind of what it feels like. It's moving in that direction, but it's a little bit too madcap of a caper film. The humor is too situational. And so I had this little thought experiment, like doing this whole sort of time travel to now thing. If you put yourself back into that period, here we were watching the film where they're coming back in time to our present day in 1986. Can this be a great film if you can't actually take the story out of the situation in which it presents itself? And my sense is, no, you can't, because it doesn't have a sense of sort of cultural resonance that allows it to be a great story beyond what you have to see on screen. What do you think?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I think that it is very much stuck in a lot of the gags that they're doing here. And I don't think you could effectively take that story and shift it. I think it is kind of stuck in the period it's in. And to that extent, I have to say I can still step back and enjoy it. But I think you're right. And this kind of goes for the last film we talked about too, Star Trek III. If I can just sit back and step myself out of, or take myself out of kind of my analytical mindset, I can sit back and I can enjoy it enough. You're probably right. It's going to be a lot easier with other people to kind of enjoy it with. When I start sitting down and really kind of analyzing it, that's when all of these problems really stand out for me, and it gets to be a much more frustrating situation. And I don't think this translates as well. And again, for me, it all goes back to the script.
I agree with you. I think that's I think the script is problematic, and it's interesting because of the hands that are involved in the script, which we can talk about. But I have a different thing that I want to bring up before we move on, which is about the Warbird, Andy. This has bugged me since it was in theaters. It has bugged me. And I think that this one thing actually weighs so much on me, it colors my entire impression of the film by at least a half star.
Wow.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Tell me.
It is a different bridge. They redesigned the bridge of the Warbird from the one that they captured to, after 3 months, they gutted it, apparently, and made it a new bridge. And that has always made me insane for a couple of reasons. First of all, and you'll remember I said this last week, I wanted to see more of that Warbird. I wanted to see more of Krug's Warbird and more of that bridge, more of that war bridge. I thought that was so great. And to get this, where it has essentially been, they bury in this line, right? They bury, we've been on Vulcan for maintenance and conversion of some of its operating systems, right? Whatever. What is that? Like, that doesn't mean we've refashioned the steel and hull and everything to make it look like a Starfleet vessel so that everybody has a place to sit. And that has always made me crazy, that if this film was supposedly, they were already starting to write this film as, they finished the last film. It has always made me crazy that they didn't give us the right Warbird.
Are you just upset that when Kirk is sitting in his chair, we don't get the fantastic purple and pink disco lights over his head? I think that's really what's bothering you.
It's a variation on a theme. There's something that feels so right to me about Kirk sitting on a throne. And I think that they gutted the throne. I know that's a terrible, it's a silly thing to be caught up on, but James Tiberius Christ, give me a break.
It's funny. I never noticed that. Although it's funny because I was watching this and I'm like, man, they are lucky that the Warbird seats people the way that their ship seated people because otherwise they wouldn't know where to sit. And little did I realize that they actually did a whole redesign just so they specifically could. How funny.
Yes.
I guess I wasn't paying well enough attention in the last film.
It comes into contrast, and particularly since we're doing these deep scene dives, right? And because you can go back to the images that we pulled from last week and compare it to this week, and you'll see that they're just not capable of the kinds of shots in the original Warbird. So I get it. There's a very practical reason to redesign the Warbird bridge, but I feel like it was a sort of absence of creativity in that. I think we could have had a really cool thing if you actually forced the crew to be in the stupid Warbird bridge. Like they stole a ship, let them live with it. That's my position.
I think that's a good position. I like it. I'll have to pay attention to that next time I watch it and see if I start getting upset about it.
I hope you do. I hope I've made it contagious. I need to go splash some water on my face.
Oh, so funny. So funny. I will say, just to completely change the tone, I loved that we at the beginning of the film, we start in kind of a I guess you could call it a pre-trial for Kirk, since he's in absentia of the Klingons, accusing him of blowing up their people. One, we get that fantastic vid screen work where it's showing us the last movie instead of anything new.
That's which is equally aggravating,
including shots outside of the ship getting blown up, which is so convenient for them to have a camera out there to actually show that. But I love that we get so many crazy aliens that are a part of the Federation, including like the people that are the hairy robot faces. I mean, what are those things?
I know, it's great. See, every Star Trek movie now needs a cantina scene, and this time it was actually a courtroom.
It was. I'm just excited. I want to know, like, if there is a Wikipedia for Star Trek. I'm sure there must be, that actually has cataloged all these different races and who they are, because some of them are just so weird and creative, and some of them are a little dumb, but I enjoy seeing them all.
Well, I think you'll be thrilled then to visit Memory Alpha, memory-alpha.wikia.com. I think that's going to be your answer.
Oh, is it?
It is. I think you're going to get excited about it, too, when you start playing with it.
Wow.
So it turns out there is. I don't know that it's as... I don't know. I mean, I haven't been through the depths, the bowels of it, but there are 42,947 separate pages inside Memory Alpha, and it's deep.
How would I search for something like that? Like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, searching for hairy robot face.
Yeah. Harry Robot Face. Who is Harry Robot Face? One of the ships that we hear losing its power and struggling about, we're going to have to figure out how to keep our systems on. It's the Yorktown, and that is a name that is definitely going to come back in the series. It's kind of a, I don't know if it's a famous name within the series, but it certainly is a recurring name, much like Rand, whatever she is this time.
She's a different job every time.
I know. She's so funny. I don't know, what was she this time? And where was she? I saw that she was in the credits, but I'm like, where was Commander Rand?
Well, it's one of the, I think it's one of the sequences of Losing Power where it's like a very high angle shot looking down on her face, and she's saying something into a speaker.
On the space station? Was she on the space station or one of the ships?
I think so, but I think we see her. I don't know. It feels like we're seeing her from the point of view of a vid screen. So I'm not entirely sure where we're seeing her.
I'm gonna have
where
to go
she
back
is.
And look again.
Yeah.
And Majel Barrett's in there, so I think somewhere too.
What about this losing power in a ship thing?
Okay, so they're losing power in spaceships and space stations and stuff, but. And again, this goes back to script and issues with things like this. It's like, if a spaceship loses power, isn't it also going to lose its gravity? I mean, people are going to not have any air to breathe. And that what the Yorktown seemed to be doing just that, well, except for the gravity. But nobody else seems to have those issues. And even in the space station, I liked that you see the spaceships that are inside kind of start drifting away. But it's like, if that ship starts drifting away, it's going to crash into a wall and like rip through it.
Let's forget, it's a spaceship.
Yeah. I wanted to see that. And maybe this is the non-light version that, I would have enjoyed seeing some of that stuff happen in. But I mean, that's what I wanted to see in this on my recent watch.
Well, first of all, I think I can't remember if there was a trend to this in The Next Generation, but in Deep Space Nine, we definitely start getting the systems failure, the implications of a broader systems failure, and where you actually have like oxygen be an issue, right? They're running out of air. I know they touched on this in The Next Generation, but it wasn't a thing that was like this is a regular risk. But the gravity bit, that one strikes me too, and it's why I feel like it's important to at least tease there is a Star Trek movie where we actually get to see that, and that's a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing. Yes, it is.
So I think you're right. It's a thing about about Star Trek, about all of these space movies. I mean, okay, one of the prequels, the Star Wars, it's the, I think it's the second one, maybe the second one, maybe it's the third one. There's the opening, where it opens, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are in separate ships and they're flying through the battle over.
Yeah, that's in the
planet.
Third one,
and
where they end up, yeah. Fighting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of systems go down, and the ship starts to fall in, and they're still in space, and there's a lot of sliding, right? And that's always bugged me. There's no sliding in space.
Well, and another point that of issue I have a little bit is the Cetacean Institute. The whole idea of having an institute that actually is taking care of whales. It's so absurd when you know what a whale is and how big a whale is. It's not like, Shamu. I mean, that's, obviously Blackfish. There's enough issues with having Shamu-sized whales in an aquarium that people can go see. But to have a humpback whale, especially in the little dinky thing that they have that they show us, it's like, that's what you have your whale in? Does it move? Oh, goodness.
Well, and I love that. And we should say this was actually on the list of vacation spots, was the Monterey Bay Aquarium, where they did a lot of these shots for the exterior of the Cetacean Institute. And what I love so much is the helicopter. It wasn't even a helicopter shot. It's a mat, but it's a mat of the exterior that has had to be like, it is so dramatically redesigned to make it so much bigger. When we get that exterior shot of her, coming out, and it's like this really shallow, it's like pool, but it's very, very it's very big. Still not big enough for us to actually see where a whale would, for example, turn around. But it's totally incompatible. When you go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, let's just say it's not that big.
No.
Did we go together?
No, I never went with you. I went with Ange.
That was on my road trip of movie destinations when we were living in Northern California, and I remember being really supremely disappointed at that as well.
Well, the fact that they didn't have whales, or just or that the scope wasn't quite
there.
Yeah, but even then, it's like the scope is still so small. Like when you understand what a whale is and what a whale would need to actually survive, it's like, that's not going to work. It was so silly. And then to see the whales, like they go under, it's like an aquarium. You go down and it's like, oh, the whale is swimming right on the other side of the glass. How convenient is that?
Well, because it can't move.
Yeah, exactly.
It's and dive, and there's no place for it to go.
What you don't realize is that there's glass on the other side. It's like, that's as much as it gets.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, dear. And then not to mention when they take the whales out of there, like within a day, like they're swimming around in Alaska. It's like, that was a quick little shift.
Yeah, because I mean, did they fly the whales out there?
I don't know. It's like, did they crate them up? And that's what I was wondering. It's like, what? It's like they're right next to the ocean. Just like open the door and let us swim into the bay. But no, we're gonna fly it to Alaska.
So we're gonna fly it to Alaska,
right where the Russians are hunting whales.
We've got this target zone. Unfortunately, it's a hunting zone. Oh well. I guess that's all we can do. Why I mean, this is really this is problematic, and it is the central purpose of the film. Why do we forgive so much?
Because it is fun. It is light. I still enjoy it. I mean, there's so much I think that I still like about the film. And even if now when I watch it, I kind of am rolling my eyes more than I was when I first watched it, I still find that it's still entertaining. I think what I find with this one is all the intentions are in the right place. I like the direction they're taking it. I just have more issues with it. It certainly dropped a little in my estimation on this recent watch, but I still end up having fun with it. I think mostly it's because of the characters. I like these characters so much.
You know what this movie is, Andy? It's like Star Trek fan fiction about itself, right? It's like taking these characters and putting them in these wildly, out of context situations, and it feels very much like that to me. Like it's just a love letter to fans and an experiment, and that is sort of what I have a little bit against how the film came to be, and really the same thing with Search for Spock. And it feels very much, when you talk about it as a trilogy, it's not really a trilogy. It is, if there ever was an accidental trilogy, this is it, right? And you hear some of the folks who are behind the film talk about it. They really define it as, we never wrote Khan with the intent that this was going to be a trilogy of films 2, 3, and 4, and I think, because of the way Khan came together and the people that you had working in it, and particularly Nicholas Meyer and what he wanted to get across in that film, moving into, to hear Harve Bennett talk about it, he said, when you do this trilogy, there's this axiom in Hollywood, right? You send a cat up a tree, then you throw rocks at it, then you bring it home. That's trilogy. And that's what they did in this film. They send the cat up the tree with Khan, they throw rocks at it with the Search for Spock, everything's falling apart, and then they bring him home in the Voyage Home. And here's the new normal where we're all heroes again. And in that respect, because the way the last two movies came together almost improvisationally, it just lacks a sense of authentic continuity, believable continuity, that I find disappointing now. And as I was watching this film, I kept thinking, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't wait to watch Star Trek V, if only as an exit to these three movies.
Wow.
I mean, it's not that I don't like it. The pieces of this film that I liked the most this time was the stuff in the Star Trek timeline, like the Star Trek continuity, right?
In the 2300s.
In the 2300s, right? It was the brief bit. I mean, it was the conversation between Spock and his father. I think it ends up being a 45-second part of the film, and it is a true highlight for me.
Well, and Spock doing his little test. I mean, that was, for me, that was like a really interesting scene, seeing Spock kind of at his best as a Vulcan, and then hitting this human stumbling block. And
yes.
I thought that was just a brilliant scene.
Oh, truly, right? So these highlights are, for me, why I go to a Trek film. And then they went back to the 80s, and they had their fun. And now I'm really ready for them to get serious about, living in their own timeline again.
I still have to say, I think the biggest problem is the script. I don't think the problem is the time travel. I don't think the problem is, these guys getting stuck in the 80s. It's just a problem of just simple script work. And I go back to the fact that Nimoy and Bennett felt the need at the time to kind of be the ones that were kind of spearheading the whole script. And yes, they brought in some other writers on this one. They brought in Steve Mearson and Peter Crykes to do some of the writing, but then they promptly
met with an accident.
Then they promptly kicked those guys out, and Bennett wrote with Nicholas Meyer, bringing Meyer back, which was great. He did such great work with Khan, but I think that he, being as I guess you could say anachronistic, or the guy who isn't the one who wants to follow the rules in the Star Trek universe, he's the one I think that brought a lot of the kind of the goofiness to the modern day storyline. But let me just read this line that Spock says. I mean, this is an example of the script just, for me, failing as a screenplay. This is when they first hear the whale transmission, or no, I shouldn't say that, sorry, the probe transmission in the future, after they get the planetary distress signal from Earth saying, don't come here, there's this probe that's going to destroy the planet. They listen to the noise, and Kirk says, what do you make of that? And Spock says, after hearing a noise over a recording of this probe, he says, most unusual, an unknown form of energy of great power and intelligence, evidently unaware that its transmissions are destructive. I find it illogical that its intentions should be hostile. It's like, how did he figure all of that out from listening to this noise? I mean, I understand, like with V'ger, he's like sensing it from afar, but still, he doesn't say anything about that. Somehow, just listening to this, and really what it is, it's a tool for these writers to get some of the exposition across that, hey, we need to say it's not hostile. It's an intelligent thing. It doesn't know that it's being bad. It's like them spelling out what they're trying to say with what this probe is, so that these guys know, okay, it's not bad, but we have to figure it out. That to me is really sloppy screenwriting.
I think so too, and I think part of it is because it screams. We talk a little bit about how this film wears its mission, right? Its ethic a little bit too heavily on its sleeve, right? That this is very much a film about sort of the environment and our role in the environment and look at what we hath wrought. That we have to go back in time to actually restock, the whales. But it's also a political story. It's also about, like, here's a thing that we don't understand, and this is, and here we're going to have this, we've got this military angle. We're going to get into the military. We don't understand the Ruskies. We're going to use words like Rusky. I mean, it is very of a period, and it smacks of just, you have to think about this now. And you have to think about it this way. You have to think about our relationship to other, powers in the world. And are we really listening to them? Or are we just listening to, do we only hear wub, 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 And I feel like that's another piece. It's just a backhanded story sensitivity. They're just ramming it down our throats.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they could have done some really interesting stuff having this probe coming to Earth. I don't know if you ever read the book Rendezvous with Rama. It's a really interesting sci-fi novel about this probe that kind of comes to Earth, and these people go to figure out what is it. And then it becomes this really interesting exploration of what is this thing that came to the planet before it then leaves. And it's not like, sucking out the atmosphere and, powering down everything. It's a really interesting kind of exploration of this thing. And I feel like they could have done something like that. The 13-year-old in me really still loves the time travel story back into the 80s, but I will now, as an adult, forever end up having issues with this film, which is really sad.
Here's what would have made it worse. How about that?
Good.
In terms of silver linings, word is that the studio sent note to Nicholas Meyer and Leonard and said, when the probe comes in and it's doing its wah 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 wah, we would like you to subtitle a translation so that we know what the probe is saying. And apparently it is Nick Meyer and Leonard who said, no, we're not going to do that. But that became a fight between the studio and the writer and director. And Harve said that he wasn't a huge fan of time travel. It's an excuse to, just sort of let things happen. But, had we gone the route of subtitling it, it would have, talk about not letting you as the audience member parse anything yourself, not letting you have any sort of original thought about the material at all. And so in that regard, I think, hallelujah, we do have a little bit of mystery around this strange thing. It may be silly that it's, executed the way it is on screen, but it was actually a fine decision, and it does leave something to think about.
Yeah, and I definitely love that element of the storyline. I think it is actually fascinating that this thing does come to Earth. Nobody knows why. It's making these noises. It does talk to the whales at the end, and then it leaves. But we don't know what. I mean, that's a really fascinating way to kind of build your story around this element. I've always loved that about this story, and maybe that's another reason that I kind of give it a pass, because it's something that I think is unique. And I think nowadays, the producers and the production company, the distributor, might have more say in getting them to actually do those subtitles and spell that out a little more. I love that it is left a mystery.
In terms of history, backstory of just sort of how the movie came to be, do we have any interesting sort of angles or stories beyond what we know about the way the trilogy came together that we've talked about?
I think it's just one of those things where they were feeling very positive about the way that Search for Spock was going, and Paramount said, "We want you to do another one, and we want the same team." And they, I think at that time it was Jeffrey Katzenberg was, I think he and or Don Steele were running Paramount. Or maybe Don was running Paramount and he was kind of the head of the motion pictures or something like that. But anyway, he met with him and said, last time we were kind of, we had you're on your training wheels. This time we're gonna, kind of let you go on your own. And so they gave him more freedom. And I think they let him kind of have a little bit more of his own vision. This was something that I was thinking about with this, and maybe this is another reason that I kind of give this more of a pass. This is, I think, what a lot of people are wanting the team that is kind of controlling the reins of Star Wars right now to do. They want them to let people have a little bit more free rein to kind of explore and do their own stories and kind of play a little bit within the world. Not necessarily be so beholden to what the higher ups are dictating that they do, and making sure that these people say, no, you got to go down this, but you can tell this story, but you have to kind of push it into this direction and into this mold so that it fits. And I will say, I think that's something that the Star Trek world has gotten away with a little more, where they've actually had some more people coming in and helming them. And it's for better or worse, they ended up feeling like, people have had their own say in what the visions are for these films.
I agree with that. That's an astute point, Andy. I can also see the other side. Like, you look at Marvel and you can feel like the initiative is, hey, what if we had these 22 movies and they were all of a piece, and there is a certain amount of control, visual and technical control and story control that we have to have if our agenda is to make essentially one giant movie. And so, I can sort of feel that.
Yeah, and there's certainly is a pro and con in each direction. I mean, obviously, the way that Marvel is running in Star Wars is they're kind of controlling these reins in such a way where I think the downside, I think, is it tends to feel a little bit more corporate, where they're really kind of having this kind of dictation as to how everything's going to look and feel. And yes, they kind of create this overall world, and you feel very much a part of it. But at the same time, it's like I feel like there's a little less originality, and I just don't think they stand out as much. And while you will certainly have the peaks and valleys in this franchise that I think show why sometimes that doesn't work, I do think that there is a little more originality. And there are plenty of problems with this film, but I do feel it's very original, and I still have a lot of fun with it.
Well, and obviously it worked in spite of any critique we may have. It's no slouch, which we'll talk about in a bit. I have this just sort of litany of bullets of things that were interesting to me, and they're not really connected in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
Shall we just run through them quickly and then
let's do it?
Jump into the deep scene dive. Okay. First, the Enterprise is only on screen for 1.5 minutes in this movie, and for some reason, I find that I'm really glad after this movie that they worked the Enterprise in. I think it would have been easy to go a different route, and I love seeing it. I love seeing the Enterprise A when it comes over the Excelsior. 1.5 minutes.
That's just that one, because they do. Technically, if you want to get technical,
yeah,
they do have some shots of the exploding version at the very start.
They do.
Where we're watching the movie.
You're right. Right.
The vid screen movie
when
version.
We're watching Star Trek 3 inside of Star Trek 4. That's fair.
Right.
Beam me up, Scotty, is a line that is, wildly used and quoted, but it is a quote of nothing. Kirk never said the words, beam me up, Scotty. He got close throughout the series and the films. The closest he got is in this film, where he says, Scotty, beam me up. that is actually used in this movie, and I like that a lot. I like it also because Beam Me Up, Scotty was not actually used, and that's a thing.
Not even in the TV show? That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. The other piece, did you happen to watch the tour of making the films with Leonard Nimoy, shot circa 1988?
I watched a number of things. I don't think I saw that one, but I did see an ILM thing that I think is going to probably talk about the same stuff.
Well, maybe. This one I liked for a very specific reason, and that is it's clearly, we're looking at Leonard, he's giving us a tour of Paramount, and suddenly there's this huge, high angle shot. And I mean high angle, we're 8 stories above a parking lot. And, the resolution is terrible. It's very, very old footage, but it's slowly, you hear Leonard Nimoy talking, and he says, he's talking, it's over, but you can't tell what's going on in the parking lot. Until it starts to slowly zoom in. You realize, there's a little figure, and that's not somebody walking to his car. That's Leonard Nimoy, and he's still narrating from 8 stories below us on this angle. And he says, I am standing in this Paramount parking lot right now. Well, at the time, if you turn around, you see this big blue wall that was used as a backdrop for us. It turns out as we were trying to figure out where we were going to film the water stuff, we discovered that this parking lot had seams, and that in fact beneath it, filled with sand, was one of the early Paramount tanks that they used to film early water battles. And we actually dug it up. We uncovered the parking lot, we dug out all the sand, and we used it to film a lot of the surface stuff. So after the warbird crashes, so the very final scene when the crew is exiting the top of the warbird and they're laughing and frolicking in the storm, that was shot in this particular tank. I love that story, that there was this buried tank underneath Paramount, and that they managed to use it, and that ended up being a cost-effective way to shoot the water stuff.
You know what that speaks to?
What?
Poor management, poor paperwork. How does a tank get buried under a parking lot and nobody knows? It's it's the same company, people.
Yeah. They have to just
where's the
notice.
Paperwork? Hey, if you need the tank, it's under the parking lot.
Yeah, filled with sand. Great. I really like the whales, and I think that...
I love the whales.
I think the whales look great. 95% of the whale footage is man-made, and the best, I think the real highlight of the whales, they have the big mechanical splashy tail and all that, but my goodness, the miniature whales, they had 2 4-foot miniature remote control whales that looked amazing. They were great.
I actually never knew they were fake whales until I was watching these special features. I thought that they had oceanographers who had captured whale footage, and that they with special effects, they somehow integrated the whale footage into the film. That's maybe just my naive brain, but I really thought that it was real whale footage the entire time. And so I really was floored when I watched the footage of those remote control whales. Way to go, ILM. Really blew me away.
Truly, truly fantastic.
But I have to say, I swear I heard them say all the whale footage was man-made. So I'm wondering if the 5% that you found is the actual footage of the real whales being skinned and killed. Was that the real whale? Where was
possibly this was in the this was the Leonard Nimoy that same interview where he says kind of off the cuff 95% of the whale footage is man-made. My hunch is yes, that there was the whale footage that was at the Cetacean Institute. There's also was the helicopter shot of the whales over the ocean when they're released. Was that real whale? I don't know if they were able to do that.
It is fake whale because they were. It was an interview. They were talking to Harve, or I think it was Harve, or I can't remember. But they were talking about how it was somebody from ILM saying that they were using all this footage of these whales, and that animal rights activists, when they saw the footage, got really upset because when you go, taking your boats around the whales, it can sometimes really disturb them and stuff. And so these people were really happy to say, no, none of it was real whales. We were using just
Well, I would take that as because the way he says it is not scientific in this Leonard Nimoy Paramount bit. So, it's I don't know beyond that, but maybe that was the 5% is the horrific
The
cutting up of the whales. Yeah, that was terrible. The probe noise. Oh, the other miniature thing that I love so much is the Huey over San Francisco Bay.
Oh, that was great, yeah.
That's another one. I had no idea was a miniature, because why would I imagine that a helicopter flying over San Francisco Bay was a miniature? But it turns out getting a Huey to fly over San Francisco Bay is not something that they could do affordably. And after hanging a giant pallet of, this transparent aluminum underneath it. So they went to Japan and found a model that they brought back with no English instructions, and they built it. It was a model Huey. They built it, and they flew that, just a trick of perspective, shooting from Alcatraz over to the city to get the skyline right. And they just flew it nice and close to the camera, and it looked like a giant Huey flying way in the distance. I think that's brilliant. Just
it was
brilliant.
crazy.
It was crazy.
I love this is something I love about the minds of effects people, when they really kind of work to come up with problems or with solutions to problems that they have like that. It's a lot easier to get away with stuff now that it's all CG. But back then, when they would really have to think about these things and come up with these solutions, it was such a creative time. I really love what all of these people were just doing. It's exciting to think about.
I totally agree. My last point that I found interesting that I had to actually have told to me is a reminder that in this film, no one is hurt as a result of hostility. Right? No one is phasered. No one is, no one is disappeared onto a planet, left marooned, buried alive. No one is hurt as a result of hostility.
Chekhov is running, but he falls.
He falls. That is, that's not a hostile engagement. That's an accident.
Yeah, right.
Right, and that's something I think they're really proud of in making this movie. That it's an action movie, it's an adventure movie, and it doesn't involve. It still gets its message across, even though a bit heavy-handed. It does it without actually showing any, any hostility like that. I thought that was good.
Well, and that goes to the whole point of, I think, what Leonard Nimoy and Harve Bennett were really going for with this story, really lightening things up and just taking a different approach with the franchise. And maybe it is one that Gene Roddenberry, on looking at it, would be more appreciative of because of those elements.
Yeah. Let's jump into the deep scene dive.
Deep scene dive.
Deep scene dive. We're jumping into one scene that we feel like exemplifies the quality workmanship, the true Corinthian leather of the film. And in that scene, you picked the scene this week. You want to set it up?
This is, they have just gotten the message about the this sound, and they've figured out what it is. It is humpback whales, and of course they are extinct now, and the only ones that they can get are in late 20th century San Francisco, and so they decide they're gonna go back through time. I love that. What's he say? Spock, start your computations for time warp. This is so fantastic. And then, and this is our sequence. It's the time travel sequence. So we get to see them start the process in the Warbird, fly around the sun, do the slingshot, and come back. We get this crazy, dream sequence, I guess, inside Kirk's head. And then they appear in the 20th century. I believe if the script we're looking at linked in the show notes here, we're starting at around scene 63, space series of shots, the slingshot.
Engage computers. Prepare for warp speed. Shields, Mr. Chekhov.
Shields, aye.
May fortune favor the foolish. Warp speed, Mr. Sulu.
Warp 2. Warp 3.
Steady as she goes.
Warp 4. 5. Warp 6. Warp 7. Warp 8.
Sir, heat shields at maximum.
Warp 9. 9.2. 9.3.
We need breakaway speed.
9.5. 9.6. 9.7. 9.8.
Why was this one an important one to you? Because there's in terms of looking at what it does for the film, it's the thing that gets us from here to there. But what is it that's interesting about what's going on screen that you find interesting?
One, this was really an opportunity to get almost all of our primary 7 Star Trek characters on the screen together. The only one missing in this particular bit is James Doohan, who's down in the engine room. But we do get this funky little kind of CG version of him in the dream sequence. And so it's nice kind of getting all of them together. It's this mission with the team, the core team. We haven't really had a scene yet where we've had all of the core team yet. And so that was kind of exciting. Plus, this is a really kind of effects-intensive sequence. And I think that was kind of something that I thought was worth looking at in context of this franchise. It takes place in the future, and we've got this fantastic warbird that they're flying. We get a slingshot around the sun. We've got this dream sequence. We get physical effects as the ship starts kind of breaking up as it's trying to hit warp 10. So there's kind of a lot of stuff happening, and it's just kind of it's exciting. It's a chance to see this wacky version of time travel.
I think the practical effects leading up to the actual time travel, right, that you mentioned in the ship when the bridge starts sort of breaking up, really celebrates Nichelle Nichols' talent at just looking generally shocked and overwhelmed.
And gorgeous while she's doing it. She owned the shock in a way that... Yes, she did.
It does. You did post a clip to a previous Nichelle Nichols film. Do you want to talk a little bit about that at all?
Nichelle Nichols is an actress who's been around for quite a while and has done quite a number of projects. And that was from what year was it? 1974 blaxploitation film called Truck Turner. And she's Dorinda, the kind of the madam at a brothel, apparently. I've never seen the film, but it's definitely a side of her that I have never seen before. And so I thought it was interesting to kind of look at and just kind of say, yeah, this is Nichelle Nichols in all of her glory. But she's just an interesting actress. I don't know. I liked seeing a different side of her because I don't know if I had seen anything other than her as Uhura.
Yeah. That's why I wanted you to just bring up, Truck Turner, because I feel like she clearly drew on the research for her role as Dorinda in Star Trek V. So there's
She's
that.
doing her dancing.
But second, it just makes you reflect on how much these films and this series delivered, for good or ill, the careers of so many of these people, right? That they, when you see not just one or two people that become known for their central character that they play, right? It's not just that. It's an entire cast of people who largely don't have a central, right, mass market sort of pop culture role that they're known for beyond this series. And they've done other work. Clearly, they've done other work. We know that, Shatner did his, quote, police drama, which shall not be named, apparently. But it is, I just find it interesting that that this is the gift of a career for so many people.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I started looking at Nichelle Nichols after watching that clip from Truck Turner, and it's like, man, she has a really impressive career. She was twice nominated for the Sarah Siddons Award for Best Actress in The Blacks and Kicks and Company. She was, what I found was really interesting, she was invited to join the board of directors of the National Space Institute, and NASA asked her to participate in an astronaut recruitment program. And what was interesting is 3 of the recruits that she brought to them were on the Challenger mission, which blew up and which is mentioned at the start of this film, in memory of it. And it was very interesting that she was like really kind of in the spotlight because of her role. And that's something Gene Roddenberry brought to this franchise is putting people like her and George Takei in roles that you wouldn't see in African American or in Asian American in these roles. And it's exciting to just see them as regular old Joes working with other people and doing jobs, not just kind of something that's much more stereotypical. And so I think it's great to see them in like this.
I do too. I just want to read the time travel sequence as it is in the script version that we have, because, here it is. Now we have been outside of the ship. We've been exterior to the bird of prey, and then we move into essentially the engine, from outside through the engine into Kirk's head. And then we have this time travel sequence. We are inside Kirk's mind as we see a series of hypnotic dream images floating up from Kirk's subconscious, undulating figures which float toward us and pass, liquid faces, amorphous figures, images of Kirk's shipmates in semi-transparent ghostly shapes, aging and regressing. Kirk's image of himself running toward himself, underwater looking up at a sunlight-dappled surface, gently waving strands of reeds at an abstract shoreline, disembodied voices, sounds, and music add to the hypnotic effect, and then a whooshing roar begins to mount and grow louder until it climaxes with a terrible bang. And we cut to the starfield, and we're back outside the ship. That is what was written in the script. I am surprised at just how close the final effect sequence ended up to that. It feels like such kind of a random string of words, but that's what it is.
Well, my sense is that because when I was listening to an interview with Mark Mangini, the sound effects editor, it sounded like when he looked at the script, it said, and then they travel through time. It was something that was much more vague. And he's just like, okay, what do I have to do here? My sense is, especially because it says time travel sequence, subjective ILM.
Yeah.
And it has that ILM in there. I think that this was after they had kind of put a lot more thought into some of the specifics of the imagery, so that ILM really had something to work with. That's just my guess.
Yeah.
But because that's like really specific script.
Yeah.
And it makes for a not fun read. This is not what you'd normally want to read with your script. So I'm guessing that.
And then they travel through time. Yeah, is probably the better thing. Talk a little bit about the sound, though, because the sound is, I think, it makes the sequence.
The mains are down, sir. Box power is...
My God, Jim, we're on.
But it is the human thing to do.
Our mission. Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth.
I think all of it really comes together the way that you've got this, the fantastic shaky ship as it's as kind of as letting you know that this ship is under a lot of duress as it's trying to hit warp 10. But you get just the intense building of the sound, which I think is great. I love that they had, the sound effects editor had this guy like beating a dumpster and using that sound effect to kind of every time they'd hit the next warp. It's kind of like what is it when they go through a different barrier, like a sound barrier?
Yeah,
this
sound
is like
barrier,
the
right.
warp barrier. Every time they'd go through it, you kind of hear this boom, this really kind of loud, but it's slowed down kind of bang happening as it kind of pops through that next warp barrier. And I love that they kind of were really exploring and playing around with some of that sort of stuff. It's a lot of noise, I guess. You get a lot of noise in this until you hit the time travel bit, and then it becomes really quiet, and you're really kind of in Kirk's head as you're hearing just interesting, like little drifting lines from each of these faces as they appear and disappear. Until you start hearing whale song.
It is very cool. Much of the, Don Peterman's the camera on this, and it's a little bit hard to judge based on the sequence because so much of it is effects.
I was curious what your thoughts were on what we saw here. Don Peterman, I mean, jumping ahead, he got nominated for an Oscar for his work on this film, on shooting this film. And I was really perplexed as to why, because I didn't find anything that stood out too much, except maybe some of the work here on the ship. I mean, it's an interesting lighting work done here. You've got some dramatic underlight, like when Sulu is working at his post, that underlight kind of hitting him from underneath. It's pretty interesting. And then as they kind of go around the sun, and you get kind of that fade to white, and then everything is bathed in this white when we see Kirk sitting there kind of passed out. And I don't know. I guess that's it. I was really kind of perplexed because I didn't find the camera work in this film any more of a standout than what we saw in Star Trek 3. Nothing jumped out at me. It seemed very expected. I mean, there's a push or a pullback from Kirk when he wakes up, and the lights kind of change from the red to the normal, and he wakes up, and that was kind of the one big camera movement that's not effects. Otherwise, I don't know, nothing stood out for me camera wise.
Yeah, especially once we get to San Francisco, right? I mean, everything looks even more sort of prescribed than and we don't have the benefit. I mean, it could just as well be any other show, kind of a walk and talk show on television, which may be part of its sort of mastery, that it actually blends in quite so well with what we were watching at the time. I don't know, but it feels it doesn't feel like a nomination film for me. There are some interesting things about this film that I think Nimoy talks about, that he really he was in this particular piece that I'm talking about. He talks at length about the perils of pan and scan related to this film, and because we don't really deal with pan and scan anymore.
That'd be curious to look at.
It is really interesting because so much of what he wants to do on this film between Peterman and Nimoy is go wide. And there are, I didn't even think about this until I was watching this. All of these great scenes that are just terrible for 4-3. Like, for example, when all three, Spock, Kirk, and Jillian are in the truck together. That's we've got one wide shot where we see the cab of the truck, and all three, we're from the perspective of the hood, we're looking at all three of them talking, and it's a great sequence because we have so much of them trying to hide the fact that they're from the future, and she's trying to probe them and get all this information out of them. And what is so important about whenever she's talking, we have to see what's going on Kirk's face or Spock's face, but when you look at that pan and scan, it's sliding all over the place, right? You never see what's going on his face while she's talking, and vice versa. It's just a disaster. And I thought it was really interesting to look at the sequences that Nimoy says were just really terrible for him in post-production for watching it on for home release, that it ended up just being disastrous.
Well, and you certainly, like, even some of this, I mean, he really spreads the crew out across that whole bridge. And yeah, you're going to be chopping a good number of people out. And then when you jump into the effects, certainly you're going to be losing just a lot of elements. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Even the last shot, the money shot, where he and the crew are in that chevron formation, in the looking into from outside of the shuttlecraft as they come over the Excelsior. My friends, we've come home. That you're only getting half a shot in the pan and scan, and that is one of those shots that Nimoy said, it's such pain. It's not what we intended, and it's something that we're just learning. Of course, he's speaking contemporaneously. He says we're just learning how to do this so that it works for both home release and for cinema, and it's really hard.
Going back to the effects work, particularly that dream sequence, listening to the ILM guys talking about how they put that together, it certainly helps reading it the way that it was written in the script that we have linked. But it's like what they did. This was a really exciting time where they were really starting to figure out what they could do with computer graphics. What they did is they actually they found this company. I think in the Bay Area that I can't remember what they're called. I have Cyberdyne in my head, and I know that's not right.
They're known for something else.
Yeah, right, exactly. But these guys would scan somebody's head, and their system would make a styrofoam mold of their head. And so ILM had them do that for each of the 7 principal characters. And then they digitized those into their system, and then they came up with a way to actually morph from one head to the next. So as rough as the effect looks today, it still was really exciting to watch because they're blending so many things. They have that fog, that kind of cloudy fog that they're all kind of coming up and out of. Then they have the computer effect itself. They have kind of the whales, kind of the funky whale things coming from behind that are kind of dissolving closer and closer. So there are a lot of really exciting elements in this, not to mention then you've got like that puppet man that is kind of falling toward Earth in a cloud, and then all of a sudden it's falling toward us, and then it's like landing in water. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff here, the way they blend it all together. I appreciated more what ILM was really doing with this film and the effects that they were working with to make something really kind of exciting and unique. And talking about time travel, how do you depict that? And then coming up with this kind of interesting way to see time travel through the mind of an unconscious Kirk is, I guess, what we get. So I thought it was a really creative way to look at it.
What did you think of the music?
Well, luckily, Pete, there's not really much music to speak of in this sequence. It's mostly sound effects. But man, this music, Leonard Rosenman, and I'm going to go off on it later when we start talking about awards, but Leonard Rosenman's music is just some of the most awful stuff. And it's, I think, the biggest embarrassment in the entire Star Trek franchise. It's just the worst. And I mean, I swear, it starts off okay because he goes back to Alexander Courage's theme when we first kick off and we get the title and everything. And then all of a sudden it turns into like Christmas bells or something. Like, I have no idea what his goal was with the score for this film, but it's so opposite everything that speaks to Star Trek. He didn't even try to incorporate everything. And the only reason he's here is because he's buddies with Leonard Nimoy, and this is the one where they let him have more reign with how he wanted to do things, and that's what he did, and it is embarrassing.
Is it this main, like, bum 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 bum? Is that the theme that you hate so much?
Yeah, it's just all of it, like da 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 da. It's like TV music is what it is. It's like something that you would get on a TV movie.
You are riled up. This is your Warbird Bridge.
This is my Warbird Bridge. It absolutely is.
I'm gonna let you have that. This is not my favorite music in the series. I agree with you there. I listened to it because I know how you feel about it, and I hadn't it's like an oral memory of it before I sat down to watch it again. And I tried to get really, really angry. because but I couldn't muster that. I really tried. I want you to know I tried. I couldn't muster it. It felt out of context to me. I absolutely agree there. It didn't feel like it was necessarily, and particularly when they go into San Francisco, when they're boots on the ground in San Francisco, I hated the music, and it just I didn't like it. I just was it didn't like it. But overall, I didn't find myself as enraged by his score, Rosenman's score, as you. I tried. I couldn't quite get there.
Well, I'm glad you tried. Thank you.
Yeah, I gotta try. There was a piece of music that was written specifically for the film, not by Rosenman. Shall we talk about the angry punk on the bus?
Oh, I think we should.
Is he your favorite part of the movie?
He's not my favorite, but as silly as it is, I have always loved that scene. I think it's just fantastic. It just makes me laugh, but it's done more effectively than a lot of the other gag scenes are. I like that that Spock gives him the Vulcan neck pinch, and I think that's a lot of fun.
This is we're talking about, what's his name now? Kirk
Thatcher.
Kirk Thatcher. He was on the crew, and the song that he wrote, I mean, he was supposed to represent like the uber stereotype of this punk youth that, that was all enraged. It was sort of the opposite of Star Trek and everything Star Trek represents. And to hear him talk about it, he said he wrote the music, and he said, well, what is exactly the opposite of Star Trek, sort of love and peace? He said, well, how about I Hate You? So they just wrote the song I Hate You. It was him and a sound engineer. They sat down and they recorded all of the instruments on one take, and they used the microphone that they had that they used to mic the slate to record the whole thing. And then they recorded the lyrics, him singing the lyrics. So he's actually singing his own song, I Hate You, I Berate You. And they did that in one take. And then it was his idea, apparently, to actually have his head slamming down on the boombox to turn it off. That's one of the slapstick sort of sitcom gags I really like.
Yeah, I agree. It's very funny. Yeah, he's an interesting guy, this Kirk Thatcher, because he is kind of in the art department side of things and the special effects kind of side of things. And he kind of came up in that world working. He was even a special effects assistant on Star Trek 3, which I think is kind of interesting. And then here he is. He was, I think, Nimoy said that he was his liaison to the ILM team. And he ended up in that scene, which I think is pretty funny.
I think so too. I think it's just great.
Just a note, he was in Spider-Man Homecoming as Punk on Street.
Are you serious? I did not see that. Yes. That's awesome.
I think that's the best. I totally missed him too, but I saw his credit as that on IMDb. So somebody else also loves Kirk Thatcher.
Right now I have to see it again. That's awesome. Any other highlights on cast and crew that we want to bring out as we...
I just think that we should point out that we do see Brock Peters popping up here. I think that he's somebody that we might want to pay attention to because we will be seeing more of him in a couple films from now.
Yes.
He's Admiral Cartwright in this, yeah.
Before he breaks bad. What?
I wasn't going to say it. You went there.
Yes, we've already talked about Rand. Who else? And Major Barrett.
And Jane Wyatt pops up. She was Spock's mother in the show, and she's back as Spock's mother here. And she's one of those actresses who has just been around for a very long time. And here she is popping up again as Spock's mother. I love that they work on keeping that sort of consistency.
Oh, definitely. And Jane Wiedlin too, who was the guitarist for the Go-Go's. Shows up in it. Yes, she is. There's a sequence it's a shot where we have the three big monitors in Starfleet in San Francisco, and the monitors start to go down, and on the right monitor is this woman with a funny curly cue of her hair. That's Jane Wiedlin. She's a guitarist for the Go-Go's. And I know about Jane Wiedlin because I was so in love with Belinda Carlisle. Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
That was a tough one. For yours truly. That was tough. So, I do want to say one more thing about the script, and because we talked about, Harve Bennett, Nicholas Meyer, we talked about Peter Creix and Steve Mearson and how they were just sort of, they kind of dropped out of the conversation. And I know this has been floating around. This is not new news, but I just love every time I hear it, that according to these guys, the secret in their head, the reason that Saavik does not get on the Warbird and fly back to Starfleet is because, according to them, she was pregnant with Spock's baby.
What?
Right? And they were already planning for a Star Trek after this one, which was going to tell the story of Spock as a parent.
I kind of like that direction. I think that would have been a really interesting journey for us to take. And I would maybe go that route instead of Star Trek 5.
It would have been a Star Trek story. Spock, a Star Trek story.
That's right.
Aluminum oxynitride, Andy. Aluminum oxynitride. Do you know what this is?
Tell me.
It's transparent aluminum, Andy. Transparent aluminum. Or sort of. It's amazing that it actually sort of exists. Yes. It is marketed under the name Alon by Cermet Corporation. And it is a lightweight, high-performance, transparent armor application, such as bulletproof and blast-resistant windows and other many military infrared optics. It has been known to stop multiple armor-piercing projectiles of up to 50 caliber, commercially available in sizes as big as 18 by 35 inch monolithic windows. So it's not, you can't quite get as big as they have it on this thing, but that is the magic of Star Trek, that they invented transparent aluminum and then they invented transparent aluminum.
But could you make a whale tank out of it? That's the real question I have.
Well, here's what it says. As a transparent armor material, Aeon provides a bulletproof product with far less weight and thickness than traditional bulletproof glass. It has been dubbed transparent aluminum, aka right here, after a fictional Star Trek material. 1.6-inch thick Alon armor is capable of stopping a 50 BMG armor-piercing rounds, which can penetrate 3.7 inches of traditional glass laminate. So that doesn't actually tell me anything about whale-sized tanks, but my goodness, it still lightens my heart.
Science coming from science fiction. I love it.
It's all about the science. Did this win any science awards?
It didn't win any science awards, but it was nominated for, it had 4 wins and 17 nominations. At the Oscars, it was nominated for Best Cinematography, surprisingly, but it lost to The Mission, rightly so.
Rightfully.
It was nominated for Best Sound. Terry Porter, David J. Hudson, Mel Metcalf, and Gene S. Cantamesa did a great job with the sound. I don't have any issues with the sound in this film, but they lost to Platoon. I think that probably was a fair loss. Likewise, I think Mark Mangini did a great job with the sound effects editing, and he was nominated for an Oscar, but it lost to Aliens. I also think that's a fair loss. Best Music Original Score, Pete. So first of all, the fact that Leonard Rosenman was nominated for an Oscar for this score, I will never be able to look at this film the same just for that reason. It makes me so mad. It lost to Round Midnight. Herbie Hancock did the score for that. Weirdly, I've never heard the score. I've never seen the film. But this is the year that we also had nominated James Horner's Aliens, Jerry Goldsmith's Hoosiers, both Star Trek people who had done the previous scores, and the fantastic Ennio Morricone score for The Mission. All of those scores lost to Herbie Hancock's score for Around Midnight. I don't know what was going on in people's heads in 1986, but I maybe I have to listen Around Midnight, because Aliens, Hoosiers, The Mission, those are 3 incredible scores.
Oh, The Mission in particular, of all of those, is stunning.
Of all of those, that's the one that I would have said should have won. That is truly just one of the great scores. So this is just a really strange year to look at. Like, what were they thinking back in 1986 with the score Oscar? Who knows?
No, man, this is something really I think really we shouldn't be really mad about it.
I'm going to be mad. I'm going to just be mad the rest of the week thinking about this. You
What
be
about-
mad about the eclipse. I'll be mad about this.
I am so mad about the Warbird Bridge. I'm not going to
Right.
sleep tonight for sure. How did it do in the box office?
Well, with Leonard Nimoy having proven himself, as we said, Paramount gave him more money and control over Star Trek IV. This film cost $24 million to make, or $52.8 million in today's dollars. The movie was the big Thanksgiving opener, hitting theaters wide November 26th, 1986, opposite Solar Babies. And I think I actually saw this as a double feature, not as a double feature intentionally with Solar Babies, but I think we went to one and then we went to the other. So that was my science fiction Thanksgiving of 1986, apparently. It opened at number 1 and held on to that slot just for one more week before it was dethroned by The Golden Child and Three Amigos. Star Trek IV went on to make $109.7 million domestically and $65 million internationally, making a grand total in today's dollars of $384.5 million. This gives the movie an adjusted profit per finished minute of $2.8 million, the best of the series thus far. That being said, Khan still has the best profit to cost ratio, making back nearly 8 times its budget, and Star Trek the Motion Picture still has the highest profit, grossing about an adjusted $75 million more than any of its competition.
That's still a crazy surprise.
I know, and they thought it was a failure.
Yeah, amazing. So, what's your final thought on this movie before we get into ranking it? Where do you feel like this? What do you feel like this has done to your investment in Star Trek?
I still will always hold a place for this one in my heart. This is one of those movies that I think I can watch despite its problems and enjoy. I am always now going to probably be struggling with more of the screenplay issues now that I'm a lot more aware of kind of what goes into writing a good story, what a good story should look like. It's going to be a really frustrating watch, but I think I will still always, I hope I will always still be able to kind of step away from that and just enjoy this, because I do still find it a really enjoyable film. I really enjoy the characters throughout. I think they all have some really shining moments, and it's fun. It is light, and I do end up liking that, and it keeps me kind of happy throughout. So I will perpetually be at odds with this, but still hopefully enjoying it.
I'm with
How's
you.
That for a long-winded way to get around to it?
You liked it. I get it. No, I'm with you. And I said when we started this whole thing, I'm more of a Star Trek guy than a Star Wars guy. And this movie, I know it sounds like I'm probably unnecessarily harsh and angsty about this film and about the last film too, which is part of the sort of, I don't know, just putting on the old next reel lab coat. It's hard for me to sit down and look at a film any of these films that I'm so close to, I was so close to, like you said, as a kid, and look at them with adult eyes and really, be critical of them. It's way too easy to find stuff that's crazy. In my heart of hearts, I love this movie like I love all the movies, and I'm okay with that, and I look forward to this movie. I've already seen it with my family. It is still fun to watch with my kiddos. They still laugh a lot at these jokes, even jokes they don't get. What the heck is a boombox, Dad? So why is that funny? I'm okay explaining those things. It's Star Trek. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to rank it, Andy.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel or swipe over in your show notes. You'll see a link to Flickchart right there. You can tap on it on your mobile device and jump straight over to the Flickchart page so you can add this to your list. Let's see how it stacks up.
All right, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, or Hot Fuzz?
Well, it's a rough start, Andy, but I'm going to say Hot Fuzz.
I am too, and I'm worried that that's putting Star Trek IV in a weird place on the list. But
yeah, it's a weird place already.
I know. Star Trek IV or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I will say Star Trek IV.
Yep.
Star Trek IV or Gremlins. Definitely Gremlins for me.
I'm on Star Trek IV on this one.
All right, let's do it.
It's worth it.
So is Gremlins.
1, 2, 3. Scissors. I just said that straight up. There was no pausing. There was no nothing. It even sounded like you said paper after I said scissors. I don't know why you would have done that.
I didn't. I said paper before you said scissors.
That is not what I heard.
That's the joy of Skype.
I am sitting here thinking, why is Andy sacrificing himself?
The greater good. Okay. Star Trek 4 or Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I really love Baby Jane, but I'm going to say Star Trek 4.
Yeah, I'm going to say Star Trek 4 too.
Star Trek 4 or The Bank Job. Haven't seen that pop up in a while.
Still going to say Star Trek 4.
I might actually now say The Bank Job.
On what grounds, sir?
I think it's the better movie. I think it's,
Besides that,
it doesn't have all the nonsense, the fish out of water nonsense. I am going to say The Bank Job, actually. So
you can have it. You've made a good case, Andy. I'll let that stand up in court.
Star Trek 4 or The Professional.
Well, I would
say Star Trek 4.
Would you really? Like, how hard?
I always have issues with Luc Besson, and I certainly have issues with that film, even though I think it might be my favorite of his, but I still think I'm going to say Star Trek 4.
All right, I'll give you Star Trek 4.
Star Trek 4 or Panic Room?
I think I'm going to go Panic Room.
I think I am too.
Oh, all right.
There you go. Star Trek 4 is now 171 on our list out of 313.
Okay.
That feels awfully low, but...
it's interesting. So where is it on your personal flick chart? Well, first of all, what does that represent? Like, what is the little magic number?
That is a little below halfway.
Okay. See, for me, it's a 64 on my list. So it's the lowest of the Trek movies, but it's still, it's still, I would say, well above half.
It's interesting, though. It actually dropped on my list. I re-ranked it. It went from 393 to 863 on a list of 3814. So that puts it at about an 87% on my list, which, I've seen a lot of bad movies, so I think it's probably fair there. But, I mean, still, it represents, a nearly 500 spot drop in my preference for it.
Yeah. I can see that. It's still higher than mine. How is that? That you end up more of a Trekkie on every one of these?
Well, I've seen a lot of bad movies, Pete.
You sure have. That is the truth. What is this on your Letterboxd rating out of 5 stars? Where does this land for you?
I'm at just a 3.5 on this one. I feel like it was higher. I feel like it was probably a 4.5, but now I think it's down to a 3.5.
I'm ranking this in with the other Trek movies that, as you know, we have not reached my very favorite Trek movie. And so it's a 3-star with a heart, but it probably would have been 3.5 if it weren't for that bridge.
That's funny. Yeah. You lost that bridge. Really
that was the half-star bridge. Yeah. It killed it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. What do we do? Where do we go from here?
Well, we're going to be leaving Leonard Nimoy's helming of this universe, and we're going to jump over to William Shatner's entry and give him a try as director, see how he does with Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Huh. That ought to be interesting.
That's one way to describe it.
Uh-huh. Okay. So
I'm looking forward to seeing what he learned directing some of those episodes of that cop show.
That cop drama. Me too. Don't forget, everybody, we've got our upcoming Saturday matinee. It comes out on Saturday, and it's right around matinee time, so you should check it out. The only way you can find it, though, is to support us over at patreon.com/thenextreel. And, we've got, it's brief, it's right about a half hour. And we talk about, it's a little bit rougher. It's a little bit rougher of a show. We don't edit it all that much. Believe it or not, it's rougher than this. But it's just a way to check in on the weekend and talk about some of the things we don't usually talk about on this show that we miss talking about, that we used to talk about, all the jibber jabber and flim flam that we used to talk about. It is a really fun thing, and we hope you will help us out and support us. And thank you, everybody who has helped us and supported us through Patreon so far. But, it's a small but growing army. How about that? It's a small
like
but growing army of Next Reel Patreon supporters. We sure appreciate it. So again, to get access to that and then come talk about it in our Slack channel, we'd love to have you there too. There's always something good to talk about over on Slack in the Next Reel channel. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Andy, for your time. As always, sir, when the movie ends, our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, this will be interesting because we haven't talked about what our Amazon picks are yet. And so we might have done the same one.
That's crazy.
Would you like to go first, or would you like to do the honors?
I should. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Now that you set that up so nicely. All right. Mine is a 5-star.
Oh, it's not the same one. Yes.
Oh, there you go. Okay. 5-star. This film should have won Oscars. So saith David John Hall. This film should have won Oscars. This film needs to be revisited and awarded at least one Oscar. I think he's thinking of Leonard Rosenman. The plot is sound. The language is appropriate. This film is a highly creative work of art. The quality of the acting beats a lot of the crap that is being put out today. Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner are not as stupid as they look. This is a high-quality film that was underrated in its day. Top grossing Star Trek film so far. This is an intelligent film of all ages and for all ages. Sincerely, David Hall, PhD.
Wow. Well, It's interesting, your review leading into my review, because he spoke specifically about the language being appropriate. Mine is a 3-star out of 5 from Polar 2, who says the swearing was unneeded. The movie would have been excellent had they not added all the swearing. I could not wait for the movie to end because I did not know when they were going to swear again. They did not need the swearing for the movie to be an enjoyable movie that you could have watched over and over and over again. For me, now, it was my first time watching it, and the last. A friend told me it was about the Star Trek team in the future going back in time to find whales, male, female, to bring them back to their time to save their future. Boy, when my friends told me about it, I wanted to buy until they told me, no, you're not going to want to buy it. And they were so very right. They messed up an excellent movie by adding foul language. I was highly disappointed.
Well, double dumbass on them.
What I would like to encourage everybody to do is think of the foulest movie that you've ever seen, and just think about the Voyage Home with actual swearing in it, because I wonder, maybe it makes it an even better movie. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy, and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who played with fire, and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in Season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy. And East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.